My name is Samantha Holloway. I'm 29, and the last time I messaged Brandon Keene, he replied with one word. Okay. Not sure. Let's talk. Not happy to help. Just, okay. And I remember how small that made me feel. I remember reading it over and over, thinking maybe I missed something. Maybe the tone changed the second time I read it. It didn't. Now, nearly a year later, his name lit up on my screen again, only this time. He was the one asking. But before I tell you how I turned that one moment into the most delicious form of justice I've ever served, I want you to do something hit like if you've ever been ignored, dismissed, or made to feel unworthy. Subscribe if you believe in silent revenge, poetic justice, and personal boundaries that bite back. Because this isn't just a story of career games. It's about finally standing tall after being made to feel small. Part 2, the backstory. When you're drowning, and no one throws a rope a year ago, I was in a free fall. My startup one I had helped build from the ground up imploded. Post-Series B crash, internal politics, leadership scandal. Take your pick. One week I had a desk and a product roadmap. The next, I was clearing out my Slack and trying to figure out how to explain 2 layoffs in 3 years. That's what no one tells you about tech. The fall is fast. And the silence afterward is worse. I applied. I networked. I wrote thoughtful messages to people from school, from old jobs, from Slack groups. Most ignored me. Some gave vague wishing you the best responses. But one message stung more than any other. Brandon Keene. He was 2 years ahead of me at MIT. One of those golden boys who gave TEDx talks at 23 and hosted mentorship panels like he invented empathy. He worked at DevSphere, a company I genuinely respected, a place I dreamed of landing in. So I messaged him. Short, polite, professional. Hey Brandon, I'm exploring opportunities and saw you're at DevSphere, wondering if you might have time to share what the culture's like there. Even a quick note would help. Hope you're doing well. He saw it within the hour, didn't respond. 3 days later, I followed up, still polite. Hey, just following up, totally understand if you're busy. Even one sentence would help me get a sense. He replied, okay. That's it. No elaboration, no links, no advice. Just okay. Like he was swatting away a fly. And I felt crushed. I shut my laptop and just sat there, embarrassed, hurt, angry at myself for expecting anything better. That night, I stared at my bedroom ceiling and asked myself, for the 100th time, why is it so easy for them to ignore people like me? Part 3, the rebuild. Becoming someone who doesn't need permission. Something in me broke that week, but not in the way I feared. I stopped waiting for handouts. I stopped hoping someone would reach down and lift me out. I applied to Parallax Systems, a startup in logistics AI, less flashy than DevSphere, but solid, gritty, ground level. I started as a junior product manager, but I worked like my name was on the building. 6 months in, I was leading internal rollouts, owning features, mentoring interns. I didn't forget Brandon, but I stopped needing him to see me. I started seeing myself. And then one Thursday afternoon, exactly 14 months after his cold. Okay. I saw his post on LinkedIn. After an incredible journey with DevSphere, I'm open to new opportunities in product plus AI. Grateful for the past. Excited for the future. Hashtag open to work. AI product. I stared at it. The profile pic, the green ring, the humble brag tone, and all I could think was, funny how your tone changes when you need something. Part 4, the first message. My turn to ghost. I did something petty, but strategic. I sent him a message. Hey Brandon. No context, no bait, just that. He didn't reply that night. But at 8:04 a.m. the next morning, my phone pinged with 3 messages in a row. Hey Sam, wow, long time. Great to hear from you. I'd love to answer your questions about DevSphere. By the way, also, I saw Parallax is growing. Any chance there's a spot open for someone like me? The switch up was so fast, it gave me whiplash. I almost laughed. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my friend Maya, who heads up HR at Parallax. She picked up immediately. You will not believe who just slid into my DMs. Maya didn't say anything at first. She just sucked on her iced matcha, gave a knowing hum, and waited for me to explain. Brandon Keene, I said flatly. He just messaged me. 3 whole paragraphs, after ignoring me for almost a year. I could hear her eyebrow raise through the phone. No way. Mr. LinkedIn thought leader. Green badge and all, I muttered, scrolling back through his cheerful word salad. Would love to hear if you're hiring. He even offered to answer my old questions. Very convenient timing. Maya exhaled slowly. Do you want me to look him up in the system? I paused. That was the question. Wasn't it, what did I want? There was a petty part of me that just wanted to leave him on read forever. That would be clean, quiet, maybe even poetic. But there was another part of me, one that remembered how cold his okay had felt in the middle of my worst month, how small I'd felt while staring at my screen, wondering if I was just forgettable that wanted him to feel it. Not rage, not revenge in the movies and monologue sense, but accountability. I didn't need him to suffer. I just needed him to see. I don't need you to do anything. I said finally, I just wanted someone else to know, so that when he starts messaging other people here, no one assumes he's some mentor saint come down from the cloud. Maya's voice softened. You want boundaries, not backlash. Exactly, I said, but if he applies to us, I want it to be clear that he doesn't get to skip the line. Not this time. Copy that, she said, with the tone of someone making a quiet mental note on your behalf. Also, if you ever want to forward those messages, I'll take a very ethical glance. We hung up, and I stared at the screen. Brandon's final message sat there, untouched. Would love to chat if anything opens up. Hope you've been well. I didn't block him. Not yet. I wanted him to sit with my silence the way I had once sat with his. Over the next few days, something strange started to happen. Brandon began interacting with every one of my LinkedIn posts. I'd write something about product timelines. He'd like it within an hour. I'd share a UX case study. He'd comment, "Great insight, Sam." Like we were old colleagues or co-authors on a book. It was performative, calculated, and a little desperate. Maya joked that he was trying to algorithm his way into my good graces. He probably set a Google alert for your name. She texted, "You're trending in the people I ignored but now need category." I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was sad. In that uniquely modern way where someone's sense of politeness activates only when their paycheck depends on it. It made me think about all the other people he probably ghosted, all the fresh grads who looked up to him, who messaged him for advice and got nothing back. People like me. So I went looking. It wasn't hard. One quick search in an old alumni Slack channel. And I found a thread from 9 months ago. A woman named Tina Shu had written, "Anyone know if Brandon Keene actually responds to mentorship requests? He posted that he was mentoring juniors in AI, but I've reached out twice and got nothing." She never got a reply in the thread. I messaged her privately. "Hey Tina, just saw your old message Brandon Keene. Had a similar experience, wanted to connect." We ended up chatting for over an hour. She was bright, sharp, and exactly the kind of person you'd want in your corner. She had reached out to Brandon when she was choosing between 2 data science offers. One was at DevSphere, where he worked. She wanted insight on team structure, leadership support, real talk, not PR fluff. He never replied. He had just posted something that week about paying it forward, she said. Her voice tight. I guess that doesn't apply when you're not useful to him. Tina didn't go to DevSphere. She went somewhere better, eventually. But she never forgot the way it felt to be treated like noise. Neither did I. That weekend, I talked to my mentor, Greg Winston. Greg had worked with Brandon on a cross-campus startup years ago and had opinions. He's the kind of guy who makes you feel like he's helping you while actually extracting your value. Greg said, flashy in public, dismissive in private. I told Greg what happened, what I was thinking, about the silence, the messages, the temptation to reply or to block. Greg didn't hesitate. You already won, he said. You just have to decide whether to let him know he lost. I asked him what he would do. He smiled. I'd give him the gift of clarity. So I opened Brandon's message thread. I typed, Hey Brandon, appreciate the follow-up. I remember reaching out last year and getting okay as a reply. At the time, I was in a pretty rough place career-wise, and it stuck with me. I paused, reread it, then continued. Now that you're looking, I get the position you're in. It's tough out there, but I believe how we treat people when there's nothing in it for us says everything. Then I deleted all of it. I realized something. I didn't want a confession. I didn't want an apology or justification or some half-baked version of I was just busy. I didn't want the emotional labor of managing his guilt. I wanted space. I wanted peace. I wanted to be the person who didn't need to explain anymore. So I left it unread, and I let it sit. 2 days later, Maya forwarded me a resume from our internal portal. It was Brandon's. And at the top of his cover letter, I'm especially excited about Parallax Systems because of the leadership and innovation led by Samantha Holloway. Her recent work in AI-integrated rollouts deeply inspired me. I laughed, out loud, alone at my desk. Because karma doesn't always come with thunder, sometimes. It whispers through the cracks of a cover letter you didn't ask for. And just like that, the plan began to take shape. To be continued. I didn't respond to Brandon's message, not even to the name drop in his cover letter. I didn't need to. He had already said everything. His enthusiasm, his sudden praise, his new respect, it was transactional, and it came too late. Instead, I did what I'd been doing for the past year. I paid attention, quietly, strategically. Parallax hiring process wasn't massive. We didn't get hundreds of applicants per role, which meant that when a candidate dropped my name, especially in bold font, Maya saw it. So did Dev, our head of product. And when I walked into our next weekly sync, the conversation was waiting for me. Got an interesting candidate yesterday, Dev said, not looking up from his laptop. Brandon Keene. You know him. I sipped my coffee carefully. We went to the same school. He was a few years ahead. I reached out to him back when I was between jobs. He wasn't exactly generous with his time. Dev chuckled, eyes still on the screen. Well, he's generous now. Wants to be part of whatever you're building. I raised an eyebrow. Funny how that works. We moved on to other candidates, but the air had shifted. What Brandon didn't realize was that by invoking my name, he'd put the weight of credibility on my shoulders, and I wasn't going to carry his. Later that day, Maya messaged me a copy of his full application packet, resume, cover letter, and most painfully his culture memo, a part of our hiring process where candidates respond to a prompt about integrity and interpersonal growth. Brandon's read like a tech-flavored TED Talk, all buzzwords and borrowed humility. He wrote about the importance of listening, of lifting others up, of building bridges when convenient, though he used the word reciprocal a lot more than kind. It wasn't the worst we'd seen, but it wasn't real. And worst of all, it didn't match what I'd seen from him when no one was watching. So I annotated it. Not to sabotage, but to clarify. Refers to mentorship values. I wrote in the margin. But historically unresponsive to mentorship requests in professional settings, may struggle to support others without direct incentive. It wasn't slander. It wasn't emotional. It was a fact. And the thing about facts is, they don't need drama to land. They just need context. I sent my notes to Maya, who thanked me without commentary. I could tell she was holding her HR tone tight, not because she disagreed, but because she understood the stakes. Meanwhile, Brandon continued to engage with my posts like we were friends. He even tagged me in a comment thread under someone else's product article, praising my visionary leadership. It felt rehearsed, hollow, and weirdly intrusive. I didn't respond publicly, but I knew what I was doing privately. I was curating a boundary, a slow, deliberate distancing that he could feel but never trace. About a week later, I saw his name again, this time in an internal status report. His resume had made it past the first filter. He was being considered. I felt something twist in my stomach, not anger, but discomfort, because despite everything, part of me didn't want to be the reason someone didn't get a job. It felt heavy, too much like gatekeeping, like I was becoming the thing I hated. So I called Greg. I feel stuck, I admitted. What if this makes me just as bad as him? Greg didn't even pause. Are you ignoring him out of spite or out of protection? Both, I said quietly. Then only one of those matters. He replied. You're not blocking his future. You're refusing to endorse his past. That's not vengeance. That's discernment. That helped, a little. But what helped more was what happened next. The hiring committee met 3 days later. Maya sent me a single line of update afterward. We're moving forward with other candidates. No further action needed. And just like that, it was done. Brandon would never know exactly what happened. He'd never get a rejection email with my name on it. He'd never be told why he didn't get a second interview. The silence he once gave me had come full circle, not as cruelty, but as consequence. And the beauty of it, it left no blood. That Friday, I gave a talk at a virtual conference on mentorship in the modern age. It wasn't personal, but it was rooted in lived truth. I spoke about intention versus impact, about the difference between performative support and real advocacy. I told a story anonymous, generalized about what it feels like to ask for help and be denied, only to have that same person later need something from you, and how boundaries can be more powerful than revenge. After the session, I received dozens of messages. Some thanked me, some shared their own versions, but one stood out. Tina, the woman I had spoken to weeks earlier, wrote, "Just watched your talk. I know who you were talking about. Thank you for saying what so many of us have felt but never voiced." Her message made me pause. Because that, right there, was the difference. Brandon had built a persona. I had built a community. He'd crafted his voice for applause. I had found mine in silence. And for the first time in a long time, I felt settled. Not triumphant, not smug, just grounded, like something inside me had been rebalanced. Still, one thought lingered as I closed my laptop that night. What would Brandon do next? Would he guess? Would he message again? Would he pivot? Or keep clinging to a script that no longer worked? I didn't know. But I had a feeling the story wasn't over just yet. To be continued. 2 weeks passed. No messages, no tags, no likes. Brandon disappeared from my feed like smoke after a match is struck quickly, quietly, as if someone somewhere had told him the room no longer wanted his warmth. At first, I felt vindicated. Not the dramatic, fist-pumping kind of vindication you see in movies. This was quieter. A stillness. The knowledge that the circle had closed not with a bang, but with a soft, precise lock click of my own choosing. But then, something strange happened. The rush faded, and in its place came something unexpected. Emptiness. I wasn't sad, I wasn't guilty, I wasn't even angry anymore. But there was a hollowness in the aftermath, like I had been holding up a wall for so long that when I finally let go, I didn't know what to do with my hands. It made me wonder how much space had I let him occupy in my mind. How many micro decisions, silent adjustments, background calculations had I made in response to a man who never really saw me? And worse was, I still letting him take up space by reliving this. I tried to shake it off, return to the normal rhythms of work, product reviews, team meetings, launch planning, But even as I wrote strategy decks, some part of me was watching the metaphorical door, waiting for him to return. Then he did. It was subtle. A single view on my LinkedIn story. One I'd posted casually, a behind-the-scenes look at our UI testing session. There it was. Brandon Keene viewed your story. No reaction, no message, just presence. The next day, another story, another view. Like he was watching, unsure if he was allowed to speak again. And honestly, that unsettled me more than any message could have. The idea that he might be hovering just outside the boundary of action, hovering not out of apology or reflection, but curiosity, or worse, strategy. I told Maya, half laughing, half nervous. "He's viewing your stories now," she asked, frowning. "That's such a millennial ghost-haunting move." I smiled, but there was tension behind it. It's like he wants me to know he's watching, without having to say anything. Maya leaned back. Let him. Let him sit with the version of you that doesn't need to perform anymore. That's the consequence. Sam, not being blocked, just being invisible to someone who used to think they mattered. That stuck with me. A week later, I received an email. Not from Brandon, from our CEO. Subject: Leadership Nominations for Fall Innovation Forum. It was a forward from another exec, suggesting I represent our company in a roundtable with other product leads from the sector, including, of course, DevSphere. The irony wasn't lost on me. The roundtable wasn't public, but it was recorded and circulated in industry Slack groups. I spoke on ethical product scaling. I mentioned mentorship in passing, nothing pointed. Just a quiet dig. The industry doesn't need more thought leaders. It needs people who actually respond to DMs. I didn't say his name. I didn't need to. He messaged me that night. "Hey Sam, caught your panel. Ayo, really well done. You've come really far. Hope you're doing great." I stared at it, not out of surprise, but because of the tone. Polite, neutral, completely devoid of weight. As if he were writing to a stranger he once met at a conference. The same kind of safe, distant warmth he had built his whole professional persona on. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. Instead, I archived the message, quietly, as a record not of him, but of who I had become in contrast to who he remained. Later that week, I met Tina for coffee. She'd landed a new role at a machine learning startup. We talked about onboarding, imposter syndrome, and the strange echo chamber of tech culture. Then she looked at me carefully and said, "Do you ever feel like you won? But it doesn't feel like a victory." I blinked. "Yes," I said before she even finished. "Exactly that." She nodded. "I thought getting even would feel cleaner, sharper. But instead it feels like standing in a room I fought to enter, only to realize it was never worth the fight." We sat in silence for a long time. Then I said the one thing I'd been too embarrassed to admit. Even to myself, I think I expected the pain to transfer from me to him. Like, once he felt it, I wouldn't have to carry it anymore. Tina didn't look away, and it didn't. "No," I whispered, "because pain doesn't transfer. It either festers or it transforms." She nodded again, but said nothing. She didn't need to. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. Not about Brandon, about me. About how much of my energy had been tied to proving my worth in the aftermath of silence. About how I'd used his indifference as fuel. And how dangerous that can be. Because what happens when the fuel runs out? Who are you? If you're no longer fighting to be seen. That was the next part of the journey. Not revenge, not reputation, but release. Still, as I closed the journal, I couldn't help but glance at my inbox at that last archived message. A small, almost imperceptible voice in my head whispered, "What if he really had changed?" But another voice, louder and steadier, replied, "If he had, he would have said sorry, not hope you're well." And for once, I didn't need to keep reading. I just needed to turn the page. To be continued. Weeks passed. Brandon didn't message again. He didn't like any more posts, didn't view another story, if I had to guess. I think he finally understood, not because I said anything, but because I didn't. Because at some point, even the most oblivious people start to recognize a closed door when it doesn't budge. He faded back into the fog of the internet, an icon, a profile, a memory algorithmically dismissed by time, and I let him. But here's the part no one tells you. Letting go is not the triumphant crescendo. It's painted to be. It's not a final scene with rain and violins. It's small, quiet, unceremonious. Like waking up one day and realizing the weight you carried isn't there. And for a second, your body panics because it got used to the burden. That was me. For months. I had carried a version of myself shaped around that moment of rejection. Around the person I thought I had to become to earn respect. But somewhere between silence and distance, that version of me dissolved. And I met someone else underneath, still ambitious. Still sharp, but no longer desperate for validation from people who couldn't even bother to say my name with care. I started noticing how much of the tech world is built on performance. Not just LinkedIn posts or culture memos, but personas crafted, curated, groomed for praise. Brandon wasn't unique in that. He was just especially polished at it. He'd made a brand out of being approachable, supportive, mentor-minded, but only when eyes were on him. And the real lesson wasn't about him at all. It was about how many people we reward for the performance of empathy, while overlooking the quiet ones who show up without fanfare. I used to think the opposite of help was harm, but now I understand often. The opposite of help is indifference. It's the empty space where connection should be. The unanswered message. The polite dismissal. The fake nod. And that kind of silence isn't neutral. It echoes. I've stopped believing in the fantasy of clean, cinematic revenge, the kind where they get what they deserve and you walk away taller, because that still centers them. It still needs an audience. But what I did, that wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I took back the power I once handed over. Quietly. Privately. With intention. And in that silence, I found something more lasting than satisfaction. I found peace. Still, I won't lie. Part of me wished he had said more. Wished he had taken the risk of being real, of naming what he did or didn't do, of saying something human. Like, I'm sorry I ignored you when you needed help. I was arrogant. I didn't care. And that wasn't okay. But maybe he didn't know how. Maybe people like Brandon don't practice those muscles. They flex credibility, not vulnerability. And that's its own kind of tragedy. But here's the thing, I don't need that apology anymore. Not because I wouldn't welcome it, but because my healing no longer depends on it. I've had to learn that closure isn't something you get. It's something you decide. You draw the line. You mark the moment. You say, that chapter is done. And then you write the next one. Mine looks very different now. I mentor junior women in product not because I have to, but because I remember. I remember what it felt like to be met with indifference in my most uncertain moment. I remember how one kind word could have changed the whole trajectory of my self-doubt. So I try to be the voice I once needed. Not loudly, not performatively, but consistently and honestly. That's the best justice of all not becoming them. Sometimes I wonder if Brandon tells himself a different version of the story, maybe in his head. We were just two professionals who crossed paths briefly, and that was that. Maybe he doesn't remember the okay. Maybe he thinks I was cold, distant, needlessly dismissive when he reached out. That's fine. We all edit our memories to make ourselves the hero. I've done it too. But I don't need to correct his narrative. I just need to be clear in mine. A while ago, I found that old message I sent him, the first one, the one where I asked for help. I read it slowly, imagining the person I used to be when I wrote it: hopeful, humble, a little afraid. And you know what? I'm proud of her. She didn't do anything wrong. She reached out. She believed people meant what they said when they talked about community and giving back. That wasn't naive. That was human. I still believe in reaching out. I still believe in asking. But I no longer attach my worth to the reply. Whether someone responds says more about them than it ever did about me. And sometimes, the silence isn't rejection. It's redirection. Because if Brandon had answered me that day, even politely, I might have ended up at DevSphere. I might have never taken the path to Parallax. Never built the platform I lead now. Never learned to stand up inside my own voice. So no, his silence didn't ruin me. It rerouted me. And eventually, it revealed me. As for him, I hope he's okay. I mean that. I hope he learned something. Not just about who gets to ask for help, but about how we respond when we're the ones holding the answers. Because sometimes, what we ignore says more than what we engage. Sometimes. The small moments are the ones people carry for years. And I don't know if he'll ever think about that message. The one that started it all. The one-word reply. The opportunity he left untouched, unread. But I do. And now, finally, I'm done holding it.